That is predictive AI. You're already using it without knowing you're using it.
I didn't know that's what it was called. Did you?
No,
It's an extreme example, sorry.
we've gone there.
Yeah. But will the response actually be generated?
You'd hope not.
You'd hope not.
Par, I'm super excited. Today we've got Raji coming in to help us break down the flipping AI jargon.
Oh my gosh.
We're finally going to get to the bottom of it.
Finally, after this long working in AI, we're finally going to break down all the complex words that we probably don't know.
Yeah, things like generative AI, LLMs, agentic AI, hallucinations. She's going to help us unpick what those things mean and help us understand whether if we understand this stuff, like, does that help us use AI better? Does that make us trust it a little bit more?
I think it's quite important to be trusting AI at this point in time in life because it is everywhere.
It is everywhere.
It's constantly evolving and it's moving so quick.
It's so quick. Every day, it seems like there's a new freaking model coming out.
I mean,
like,
there is.
Yeah, there basically is. And like, what does that even mean? Are they even any better? Do they change? I don't know.
Let's bring her on.
Let's do it. Well, welcome, Raji. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me. Yeah.
Very exciting. I guess, like, to kick off, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, how you got there?
Sure. I'm Rajashree Ramakrishnan. I work for Lloyds Banking Group as a product lead within the Agentic and AI platform services. And my journey to actually being a product has meandered from being a developer through to consulting, falling in love with product management, and then taking a decision I actually want to do this full time as a role. That's how I ended up in Lloyds Banking Group. And across 18 years of actually being in the industry, I've worked across different technologies, mobile, digital, cloud, and now AI. And I feel that the journey has helped sort of every block, every role has helped build my understanding about technology, but also the impact on people as such. And currently, my focus in Lloyds Banking Group is predominantly agentic observability. As a product lead for agentic observability, my role is to ensure that I'm building out a product that is helpful for our internal customers who can then adopt it to embed observability, which is essentially ensuring that the agent is behaving correctly as required within policy, to provide the tooling as well as the required documentation to help them onboard use it successfully, because that means we are driving trust with our end customers, and agentic without trust is not adoptable.
Amazing. A lot of big words there.
Lots of big words. I was like trying to follow and keep up with a lot of the words you were saying. Agentic being definitely one of them, which is what this episode is all about.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say. So I think, AI it's in this like interesting place. I think it's kind of like a field that's exploded, right? And has become part of like the kind of popular terminology. Like everyone's talking about AI. Everyone's ChatGPTing this, that, and the other.
Yep.
And like what it's like this kind of weird phenomenon that happens when a tech like explodes, in that you have all of a sudden all these like kind of very techie words that everyone is just kind of throwing into other sentences. And I think that gets quite messy and confusing. So it's a tough place to be.
I agree. And I believe that technology shouldn't be difficult to understand. It should be simple. And I'm happy to share some simple ways to actually understand what this technology is. Artificial intelligence, or AI, at its core it's just a system that's trying to ensure that, we're creating systems or machines that can actually do tasks with the level of human intelligence. And its basic components are mathematics, data, and programming. It's not magic. It is quite simply systems and machines that are slowly being built to reach human abilities and human intelligence.
It's very interesting because I guess when we talk about jargon, it's kind of like made its way through time, because initially it was expert systems, then sort of it became machine learning, then maybe deep learning, and now sort of generative AI. So it's kind of had its tolls. And what I noticed is that you mentioned pretty much all of those words when explaining it. And when I was reading about this, it basically took the term expert system all the way back to like before the 2000s. So it's not necessarily a new concept, but just jargon has literally made its way through time all the way up until now, which is generative AI.
I mean, that's the thing though, isn't it? AI, we think of it as a new thing, right? Like we think of it having launched with ChatGPT in 2022, but it's been around for decades, right? And so all of these terms have kind of come along for the ride. I suppose, like, can you help us out? Like, what's the difference when we say like AI versus machine learning versus LLMs? Like, what are the difference between those?
Cool. I'll try my best to simplify this. So if you think about AI, it's the broad field of artificial intelligence or machines that are trying to adapt and achieve human intelligence. Then you have machine learning, which is a subfield or domain within artificial intelligence, followed by deep learning. And then deep learning, one form of it is generative AI. And agentic is essentially the application of generative AI. And if I break down each of these terms, machine learning is quite simply, how does a machine learn to identify, categorize, recognize patterns, understand speech, language, natural language for that matter, patterns.
When we say natural language, what do we mean?
Natural language is just language that we speak in.
Okay,
right?
Words,
essentially.
Sentence structures and stuff like that.
Exactly.
Right.
How does it understand? Now, if I take the analogy of a child trying to learn, imagine that it's in its first steps. You would offer it, flashcards with saying A for apple, C for cat, D for dog. That's the start of machine learning, and that's called supervised learning. Just like a parent would supervise their learning, that's the starting bit for machine learning.
I'll tell my nephew next time that he's at the start of his machine learning journey. You're going to be a robot.
A is for Really good.
I hope this is not going to be picked up as something I need to be careful about.
No,
that's good.
I said it, you didn't. It's okay. I'll take the hit. It's fine.
And the next bit is once the child learns like these words, it can look at its local environment and go, hey, in its house, just, interaction with its parents and family. Oh, I understand what this is. So it starts picking up things by itself because it's experiencing it. That is essentially unsupervised learning.
Are we still talking about machine learning
Yes.
now? So these are two different kinds of parts of machine learning.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. It's just the way in which it learns.
Yeah.
Supervised is you have someone teaching it
Okay.
to learn, whether that's text, whether that is images, whether that's, audio.
Yeah.
It's essentially teaching it how to recognize these patterns and what does this mean.
So I was going to ask, because I have like a general interest in psychology and like human development and kind of neurology and that kind of stuff. And then what you're describing is almost exactly how we've learned is the best way to teach children. What came first? Are we basing our like teaching of AI on like how we learn as humans, or like is there kind of a connection between those things?
I'd say yes, there is a connection. Now, if you think about the evolution from machine learning to deep learning, which is that next level, it is trying to emulate the neurological pathways and nervous system of your brain, of how it learns, and the depth of details and the different things it takes into consideration, right? And it's a big leap from machine learning to deep learning, because what that means is the number of parameters or factors and words, text, images it learns is quadratic. So essentially it is not just exponential going from 1 to 5 or 1 to 4.
It's doing that times 4, basically.
Yeah, times 4. Thank you.
So if I don't know if this is right, is it like you mentioned a child learning in its local environment, right? When you say it's like times 4, etc., would that be like a child growing and then going outside and seeing more things and then going out somewhere else and kind of learning more and more and more, and then that's what you mean by exponential?
Yes, so exponential, essentially, as more data, more information is consumed, as a child, you start to relate to things, right? You start with words, then you understand structure, sentences, grammar, and then actually summarizing things to saying, I understand, I can actually write something, which is where your generation starts. The deep learning bit is I can find relationship between concepts, between words, between text. Ultimately, a machine doesn't understand words. It is translated into numbers and represented on a 3-dimensional map called a vector
So this is super interesting because I've seen this with my nieces, right? So like you go through a book and you're like, this is a cat, and it's a 2D picture of a cat. And then you can go to another book and you're like, this is also a cat. And actually they don't look that alike. But they start, after you've done that quite a few times and you've also pointed to a cat in the street, they start recognizing, even though these things are like quite different, right? Like before you understand the concept of like a 3D versus an image of something. And then eventually you can get to something and it's like, it like it's a cartoon of a cat, for example. They're like, cat, like they, you know, and that's that kind of idea, right? Like you start with telling it exactly, and then it starts learning in its own way. It kind of makes a jump.
It does. Yeah. It's that leap in understanding. Now, how it understands is sort of the black box, because in deep learning, you have, just like we have neurons, which try to understand, correlate, and then when neurons talk to each other, you then have information that... so if you think about this as your senses as the input for the data, and then your brain analyzing, processing through different layers, trying to build the concepts, the relationships between them, and then ultimately it generates something which is either, it says, it draws, drawing a picture of a cat, whether that's, writing down letters and words. That's the evolution. So deep learning is taking a whole volume of data, understanding those relationships across text, images, audio, so different modes, mediums, and then when you ask it a question, essentially through a chat bot, it then gives you the response by correlating and predicting the next text, the next pixel.
Interesting. So we've kind of linked, machine learning, which is like a core part of this whole field of AI, and how we teach machines to learn to be like the same or very similar as how we as humans learn, right? Like, I think maybe that helps us to kind of trust it a bit more. Like the more you understand, when you think about a machine, all of a sudden just knows all this information, like that's quite scary. But if you think, oh no, it knows that information because it's been trained and it's learned in the same way as we have as children, that kind of helps you to get that sense of trust. And like it's, as you said, not magic, right? Like it is a logical system that works in ways that you would expect it to.
Yeah, I agree. There is that bit about, just because it's learning like humans does, you do trust us implicitly. But trust has two sides, like when do you offer trust and when you should be very careful about it. And I think it's that balance between trusting the system blindly versus knowing when to trust it, or ensuring that when you trust it, you are careful with the trust you're sharing. Just like humans, right? You need to build trust.
Yeah.
And that trust is based on knowing a person, where they come from, do you have shared interests, backgrounds? But if you apply that to a system, it is not human. It is trained, or it learns from the internet. And and a lot of other sources like books, videos, films, images. And if you put that into context, you will read it could be reading a blog. It could read materials which are considered biased, toxic. So we have to be careful about how far we trust it, because the sources of the system have a lot of challenges or issues where you would traditionally not, give it trust.
Yeah, I love this, and I'd love to dive into that a bit more in a little bit, right? Like the more we understand, the better we can trust it. But I think in order to do that, we need to understand a bit more, right? And I think one of the things that, I don't know about you, Paru, but like learning and starting working in AI is that you all of a sudden are just like bombarded with all of these terms, right? And it's not just then, you see it in the news now, it's like, it's kind of everywhere. And I think one big leap forward is like to kind of understand what those terms mean, so that you can start to paint a picture of how it all works.
Yeah, it's pretty mainstream now, isn't it? With everyone talking about it in the news. Yeah, I'd love to know more about the different... I made a list, actually. I made a list of words that I came into the job thinking, what is this? And I kind of like just sat with different people and just Googled the hell out of it. And to be really honest, some of it I still don't really fully understand. And I would like to definitely dig into those and learn a little bit more about them.
Sure.
Maybe we can go through some of it with you, and you can tell us what each word means. Okay, predictive AI.
So, you use WhatsApp.
Mm-hmm.
How many times have you been like, I need to quickly send a message, and it just brings up the next word?
Yeah.
That is predictive AI. You're already using it without knowing you're using it.
I didn't know that's what it was called. Did you?
No.
And it actually leads the way to generation. Essentially, generation, what is generation? It's actually creating something based on some data that you give it, right? Some information you give it. For example, if we tell a child, draw the picture of a cat, based on what the child has learned, it'll draw a picture of the cat. Like if it's a child still learning, it'll draw a very rough sketch of a cat. Now, if that child learns so deeply that it knows colors of cats, how to do 3D representations, imagine that's going to be a teenager, and drawing and sketching, it's like the skill that the child has learned, then can actually draw a better version of the cat. So generative AI is essentially that. It depends how much that machine or model has learned, what data it has been given, and then creates the image. If you say, draw me the picture of a cat, it will look at all the information it has about a cat. And going back to what I stated at the start, these are all numbers, right? Numbers on like a 3D map.
Okay.
So the model will look at what the word cat means. It will look for an image representation, again, encoded as numbers. And it will then generate pixel by pixel by pixel of the image of a cat. If you say, I want a orange tabby cat, or instead of that you say another cat type, then based on what data it knows about it, it'll go and look at that information, the numbers, and slowly start creating it.
Numbers being like code, or
numbers being
like just
numbers. Now this is where it gets very complicated. You can say these are general representations, like in a 3D map, right? You will have a coordinate which has some big numbers, which tells you this is where it lands on the map.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very similar structure. And there's obviously programming and mathematics, which then You have advanced mathematics like calculus, matrix multiplication, a whole lot of stuff which data scientists and researchers are really experts at, to say how that representation is encoded. It's not the simple math that we think, but that's the simplest way to think about it.
Yeah.
Like a
so this is the zeros and ones, right? Like computer language. It speaks to it in zero and ones and everything. That's too much for us. Okay. So when you were talking about that, it really made me think. I have a 3-year-old niece and an 8-year-old niece, and if the 3-year-old draws me a picture, and I'm like, and it's just a scribbles. I'm like, oh, it's so cute. Like, it's lovely. What is it? And she's like, it's a cat. And I'm like, sure. And then my 8-year-old niece, who's like way better than me at drawing, draws this like perfect representation, 3D. It's got like shading. It's like this amazing cat. And that exactly reminds me the difference of those things. It's like, I guess the more learning you do, right? Presumably the better data that you have, the better the kind of generation but I guess I'm still struggling to see the difference between predictive and generative then.
Prediction is part of generation.
Got you. It's the first step, I'm guessing. Yeah.
So that's basics. Like, can you predict the next text, next word in the sentence, next set of 3 words? So imagine if you're using Gmail, right? It can complete your sentence because it has learned so many different sentence variations. It can predict what those next 3 words could be, especially in the context of who you're messaging, what the tone is, or is it like a response? Is it a formal one?
What the previous thread has been,
exactly.
Stuff like that. Yeah, I really enjoy that feature.
Yes. So that's fundamentals, right, of predictive AI. And the more complex it becomes is when you have multimodal. Multimodals essentially, it's not just text, words. You have image and audio.
So like voice, sound,
yeah. And then video.
Yeah.
So these are all what is termed as multimodal, different modes of information. The complexity of generating and encoding that one number for that one pixel, for that one audio, is complex math programming.
And so, okay, so let me just get this straight. If I ask ChatGPT to write an email for me, it is using predictive AI to generate the next word, but like it's generative because it is taking an understanding of what I want in that email and able to kind of create the full thing.
Yes.
Okay.
Prediction is usually 1 or 2 words, right? Like it's a shorter length. Generation is content. So it's a volume,
right,
essentially.
Right. Yeah.
Now, if you say I want a 1-line email response, it'll generate that. But it's understanding the context in which you've asked the question. Prediction is not that evolved. It helps. So it is one of the things that helps generate it. But if you think about it as I want a full paragraph versus I want to know what the next 3 words are.
Yeah.
That's what I would say as the difference.
I'm keen to move on, but before I do, one thing that I wanted to kind of lean into, and I think this might help us in what I was going to ask as the next thing I wanted to explain. But one thing that really helped me with AI was understanding that it is not a truth machine, it's a predictive machine, right? It's basically just really good at probability. So saying like, this is the most probable either next word, or this is the most probable overall outcome.
Yeah.
It's not about saying this is the truth.
Yes.
And I think that takes me very nicely to hallucinations, because you hear about this a lot. And when I understood that helped me to see why hallucinations might happen. So tell us a little bit more about like why AI hallucinates and how.
What is a hallucination?
And why should we trust something that hallucinates?
Excellent question. I'll share what my understanding of hallucination is, right? If you look at it, simple human hallucination, it's essentially you're seeing something that is not true, that's not present, and it is made up. Because, like I mentioned, AI systems are probabilistic. They are non-deterministic. Non-determinism essentially is you cannot tell exactly what happens next, right? Because of that, machines can think that what the relationships that it understands as part of its inner workings, it might think that's the right answer for you. But this is where sense checking answers, going back to the sources of data, and not accepting what it says is important. And the bit I said about the balance of trusting implicitly, blindly, versus actually sense checking and being careful about accepting whatever it spits out becomes more relevant. Just like even before we had chatbots and ChatGPT, when we went to Google, there's so many data and blogs and articles and news.
Yeah.
Whenever we did a search term and came up with a number of results, and we clicked through it, we had to take the onus and accountability and responsibility of checking that data, verifying, validating it. That doesn't go away still. And because because we feel that it's a human, it gives that human-like response, we tend to equate it to, oh, this is a human, I want to trust it.
Yeah.
Do you have any smart ways to sense check? Because, I mean, I think about that Google example, you're so right. Like you would get, a page of results. You'd always go into the first one, obviously. And then you would kind of have a look and to your point, like, no, this isn't finding what I want. And I'm going to go back and I might then like see if I can find the same thing a couple of times. Because now I'm like, yeah, this is probably right because I've seen it in more than one place. How can we do something similar with AI?
You can accept what is there, or you can actually challenge and say that probably this is not the truth because I know the source of it. I know from the person who has shared this news piece that this is not what was said. This is not what had happened. And you would take steps to sense check. But I'm sure we all know where Google search results have been taken as gospel as well, right? And the same thing carries into the paradigm of AI, because guess what? Where does all the data for AI get trained from? The web, the internet. So any biases, any sort of data which is incorrect, toxic, which is gender biased or is discriminatory, if that AI model is fed that, that's what it will spit out.
So I guess this kind of takes me back to what I said in the beginning, right? Like if we know it can hallucinate and make stuff up, and we know it's maybe fed on things that are maybe right, maybe wrong, may not kind of like align with how we see the world. Like what ways can, because you've made the really astute point that we shouldn't just blindly trust something. We shouldn't just blindly trust anything, right? Like we should use kind of critical thinking, but particularly AI, because I mean, the more we understand its flaws, the more we know we need to kind of dig in and try to make sure that we know when we can trust it. I guess my question is like, okay, with Google search, you would check a few sources. You would maybe try to understand the source itself, right? Like I might not trust something that's on the Daily Mail as much as I trust on The Guardian or whatever. Like, what do you have any tips with what we can do? Let's just say with we ask ChatGPT a question, or we kind of ask it to do something for us. What's your go-to tips for sense checking it?
Yeah.
Before I answer that, I think one key thing that providers of these technologies, essentially ChatGPT, the Geminis, the Claudes, what they definitely are, and any new vendors, technology providers, what they are proactively working towards is ensuring that there are safety filters built in. For simple things, exactly like toxicity bias, there are relevant scores, there are relevant policies and benchmarks that need to be set and proactively, ensure the responses are not generated in such a way. So you might come across specific ChatGPT response if you were asking it, like, tell me how to build, how to, someone, for example, it's an extreme example, sorry.
We've gone there.
Yeah. but will it give it, will the response actually be generated?
You'd hope not.
You'd hope not. And that's what these model providers need to ensure, is that when some questions like this are requested, because you don't know which user is going to be asking this, right?
Of course.
So how do you prevent that sort of misuse of the technology? So that responsibility lies not only with technology providers, but also from ourselves of, ensuring we are.
What I would like to understand is, why doesn't AI say, I don't know? When it doesn't know the answer, why doesn't it just say, I don't know? Why can it not do that as a functionality? If it knows it's not, if it doesn't have the ability to produce, like you said, correct or factual, why would it not just say, I don't know?
I think it does, depending on what you ask it. If it has any information, which is quite plenty.
Yeah, okay.
It's very difficult to say that it doesn't know, but the response is, I am unable to understand your question.
Right.
I'm unable to, it might say I'm unable to respond because this is within the parameters of my model. If you see a Gemini and ChatGPT and you ask specific questions, it does come back with that sort of response. But the default is, I can't understand your question, especially if you're multilingual and you ask questions in, say, Hindi, Urdu, which it might not be able to contextualize, because a lot of these models are built on English text.
Right.
I think about, again, sorry, I'm obsessed with thinking about my nieces when it comes to these things, so I feel like it helps me visualize. But I think about if you ask kids about stuff, they'll give you an answer.
Yeah, regardless of
because
what,
they know I guess they haven't, the difference is they haven't got the filter to say, like, I'm probably not qualified to talk about this, or I don't know exactly what you're asking. They'll just rabbit on about anything because they're like, oh, that kind of relates to this thing in my brain.
Yeah, they have
so
an
let
imagination and they let it run. Yeah, okay, fine.
I've still not answered your main question.
Yeah. The techniques, come on, help me.
How do we sense check this? How do we do that? It's difficult, right? Because compared to, say, I'll take an example of the videos that get generated using AI, right? They are so realistic. It's very difficult to differentiate, especially I think the latest models that have been realized, very difficult to differentiate between what is real and what is AI generated. The lifelike quality of them. And it is increasingly important to think about these things critically, challenge what you hear and what you see. So far, what we've been told is you rely only on what your eyes see and accept. I don't think that is necessarily applicable now. I don't know if there is a clear answer of how to sense check, but you can take proactive steps to ensure that you're keeping yourself safe, right?
Yeah.
The first thing is, because these models take a lot of information, as far as possible, don't share your personally identifiable information. So your name, your address, everything, personal details about yourself. And the second thing would be ask questions, right? Yeah. Just like you would challenge a human being. Are you sure this is the right thing? And also asking it, critically challenge your thinking.
Okay, so a prompt saying that would actually help. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I tend to use that when I'm thinking about my work, right? I share, obviously within our bank, we have Microsoft Copilot, which helps us do our jobs better. It's about challenging thinking. So that's how you can enhance your role. That's how I tend to use it, to challenge my thinking, because it helps me see gaps in my thinking. But we also need to stress test like what you're sharing, especially when we're doing like market research.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. Where have you got the source
My prompt is usually, I do a lot of where's the source, list it, and then I manually check it.
Exactly.
I do a lot of prompt, don't hallucinate. I don't even know if at this point it works, but I always have that in there, which is like, don't hallucinate. I want it accurate.
Let's clarify. Prompt, right?
Okay.
What you put in.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
what you write into the open text box.
open text
just 'cause
box, yeah.
We're already jargoning.
Yes.
Yes. Well, there you go. We are already jargoning. And one thing I wanted to say is, like, you know, when we were talking, I've got two things to say. One thing I was going to say is, you know, when we were talking earlier about the child and the machine sort of learning, I think, yeah, you're right. I was almost about to call out critical thinking as a factor that, you know, we just don't want to lose as humans. Because let's say, for example, even now, I'm not sure about you, but, you know, maybe you're scrolling or you're seeing an ad or you're seeing something, and like, you know, I always have like the news on or something. I'm always like on news channels, and I don't know if I trust headlines as much anymore without going and doing a quick backup research thing, or like I definitely don't trust images. I have seen some wild images that have been made up. So every time, like, even if my dad sends me something, look at this, oh my gosh, I'm like, Dad, are you sure that's real? Like, just always questioning it. And I guess it would be interesting to get to a point where the computer can do that for itself.
Yes.
Which I guess we are a long way away.
Yeah. And I quite like that. Yeah. You know, sense checking, asking for the sources and clicking on those sources and validating. Sometimes you get what are called error pages where it's like a blank.
Yes.
404.
Like, how are you generating something from this which has no information?
Yeah, and it's like it looks like such a valid URL. Or URL essentially the web link.
Yeah.
And it's essentially those sort of sense checking. I was thinking when, you know, previous models, if an image was generated, you could see if they were like, instead of 5 fingers, it's like 6 or
so sorry, previous models, like older versions of ChatGPT, etc.
Yes.
Yeah, I remember the old, like, your hand on the arm, you've like 18 fingers. You're like,
2 arms.
This looks weird.
Yeah, critical thinking. I think it's a skill.
Because those types of errors with these newer models are not as common. People are even putting in like not lawsuits, but like preservations on their personal image to ensure that you're not allowed to, if they find an image of their face that is not actually them or hasn't been created from a camera of theirs or whatever, then that person can get fined or whatever. So it's really interesting. A lot of celebrities are doing this. So
I guess I just wanted to kind of like bring it back a little bit to, you know, I think that point of you can challenge it, right? Like, you don't have to just blindly accept what you get. You can push, absolutely do due diligence on the links that it gives. So if you ask for sources, make sure you look into the links and make sure they are things that you would trust if you were Googling. But I think that point of like kind of pushing back and saying, like, is this true? I don't know about this. And another thing that I really like to do is when it gives me a fact or gives me a quote or it gives me something that it's pulled out of somewhere, give either another AI an open question related to that and see, does it come up?
Interesting.
Or ask another AI to go and find where that information came from.
And what happens when you do that?
So it either comes up with the same thing, or it will look for it and be like, yeah, it's from here, or it's not from here. But you have to be really careful not to give it a leading question, because it will probably come back affirmative. It's like, I think it's more likely to make it up then. But I think those things that I find, like, you know, I think there's 2 things that can happen, right? Like, we're in this world where we're like bombarded with things that may or may not have been generated by AI. And I think, to your point, we have to question those things. We've got to say, is this story correct? Is this image real? Is this video real? Like, the deep fakes and everything are becoming so convincing. But the other side is, like, if we're going to say, like, I'm going to, you know, not take a chance, but I'm going to invest in using AI because I can see that, you know, this could make me more productive or
has value,
better at my work. Yeah. How do I make sure that I can trust what I get from it? And I guess the point is, the trust comes from knowing you can't fully trust it, and you've got to do the work and apply critical thinking to what you get from it.
A very small level of skepticism is healthy.
Yes, a healthy level.
Level.
Yes. I just want to deep fakes. Should we do bingo?
Yeah, let's go. Deep fakes. Tell us what's happening there, because I hear about these things and I think, like, how in God's green earth do they manage to generate, like, I don't know if this is a good thing to bring up, but do you remember when Donald Trump and Elon Musk got like super cozy?
Oh yeah.
And they released a video of was it Elon Musk licking Donald's toes or something?
No. Oh my God,
it was so
gross
real
and disgusting.
I've seen some wild deepfakes out there. I've seen some absolutely.
Where are you on the web, Paru?
Do you know it's the worst thing is it's not even the web. It's people trying things out.
Yeah,
like it's friend groups
and that's
taking an image, right, and trying things out. Like, and that, you know, like a friend group of mine, they were at a wedding and they took obviously pictures with each other and stuff, and they took those pictures and they created some really disturbing.
Oh gosh.
Stuff. Yeah.
Your friend groups. The WhatsApp chat be banging. That sounds good.
Oh, I worry. I do worry.
No one sends me these things.
I think you should be very happy about that. But it makes you really worry about like the future and, like, you know, when are these guardrails and safeguarding, when is it all going to kind of come out and sort of surface itself so that this doesn't really happen, and how far are people going to take it, you know?
My reflection on that one point there is that humans have always thought about these warped thoughts, but it's never been, visualized or out in public, and those dark thoughts are coming out now in different ways. So I still think the machine is doing what it has been fed, what it has been asked.
Yeah.
It is just an entity that is just doing what you have asked it. It has no emotion. It has no thought process.
Yeah.
And
can't
therefore
blame the machine.
No, it's the prompter.
Yeah, it is the person who is
behind.
In front of the in front of ChatGPT or
Stop
Gemini.
it, kids.
I think this is we here. Being in the industry and close to that technology, understand the pitfalls of these things and what we are learning. But if you think about the audience in general, not everybody approaches it with that sort of mindset. You spoke about guardrails and safety rules, etc., right? Those are proactive measures we are thinking about introducing so that burden doesn't fall on the user. But do you think everyone will meet that?
You're talking about AI is just doing, or like machines, they're just doing what they're told, right? Like they act on the information that they get, and don't necessarily ask questions. They just generate the output. But I mean, I think it's a perfect segue. You've talked about your role being in agentic observability, and I think you also mentioned 2025 has been the year of agentic, and I think everyone's heard some mention of agentic happening somewhere. What is agentic AI? Help us understand. My general understanding is agentic AI it has more autonomy, right? So it gets away from just being instructed by a human, and I guess that's probably why it's getting so much notoriety, because that slightly pushes us into that slightly scary territory where the machine is telling the machine what to do. Firstly, what actually is agentic AI? And secondly, like, can we or will we ever be able to trust it?
So agentic AI, generative AI, what we spoke about was it generates content, right? It's static. Right? It generates, it doesn't take any action. It doesn't go and push a button. It doesn't send an email. It doesn't do what we want it to do. The action is still with the human. Agentic AI is when it is, like I said, it has autonomy. By that means it can execute actions or tasks of its own. And it can take decisions based on the user input. So, for example, if I were telling an agent, send an email to Eilish, setting out.
What's an agent? Sorry.
An agent is just an entity. It's just your chat input.
Okay.
It's it could be also an image, right, which has instructions. It could be a document that gets read and understood.
Okay.
An agent is just a way to accept that information. It can take different.
What part of ChatGPT is the agent?
That's a great question, because it gets very confusing when you have an agent which is actually exactly the chatbot or chat input that you're utilizing, but it could also be something that's separate. So you could have multiple agents. Your chat interface could itself be an agent.
Okay.
Which has you provided the user input of send an email, and it might have the capability to go ahead and do the action by itself.
Yeah.
Or it could then send it could just be a chat. It's just a simple UI, as in it's just a visual aid through which you input your question prompt, and then it passes that to an agent, which then takes decision of, I want to actually send it to another agent which specifically deals with emails, or I want to call the email tool.
Okay.
So an agent is an entity that has its own set of rules and decision making.
Yes.
It's an LLM.
So is an agent a technical functionality that is able to make decisions?
If it has got the power to make decisions.
Right. If it's been built in such a way.
In such a way.
Okay.
Yeah. And generally, agents are a form of large language model. Large language models are essentially models where your input is a text and your output is a text, and it's trained on text.
Okay.
Compared to a multimodal model, tongue twister, where you have multiple different inputs like types, text, image, etc., and it understands the relationship, and then it can respond in those models.
Okay. All right. With you now.
Yeah. So essentially an agent in Agentic AI has that ability to do a task. And there are some fundamentals what qualifies something as an agent, which is it has, and as a agentic, to be called agentic, it has some fundamentals, which is essentially it has the ability to plan. So it can break down things into different tasks and then say, this is the first step, this is the next step, etc. It has memory, so it can remember things that you shared before. In the previous versions of a lot of like ChatGPT, Gemini, it didn't come with memory, which remembered your previous task. So every time you have to start fresh, have that conversation if you're having a very long chat. And the third thing is the ability to call tools, functions. Essentially, can it access another application? Can it actually enable an action, right? Those are three key things, and an agentic system can execute or achieve some goals.
Okay, so let me just use a real world example to make sure that I'm understanding correctly. And let's say I often use, we've all used AI to help us write an email, okay? So non-agentic AI, I go into ChatGPT and I say, hey, I've had this conversation. I need this email to be written in this style, blah, 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 blah. It generates an email. Agentic would be, the first thing is it needs to be able to plan. So I'm saying, I want you to write an email that's going to be sent on this day. And it needs to be, I don't know, You need to construct something based on this conversation. So you're giving it like it has more of a detailed task. It uses memory. So I'm saying like recall previous chats where I've discussed this person or this conversation. And then the last thing is it needs to be able to interact with something else. So that would be like send the email on my behalf. It's interacting, say, with my Gmail. Yeah. And it's like setting it up and it's taking all of those steps. So I've still been in charge in terms of telling it the instructions. But the difference is rather than just writing the email, it's going ahead and taking additional steps. So it's planning, it's remembering and like pulling information from elsewhere, and then it's going and actually doing the action. Would that be a fair comparison?
Yeah,
it's basically executing the task for you, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a great way to summarize it. And in terms of, is it that the user always has to provide an input? The answer is, if it is a multi-agent system, so if you are stitching together two different agents, the first one just says that, hey, I need you to go find information about all those previous chats, if that's the only thing the agent needs to do.
Yeah.
And then it says, I will now hand you over to the next agent, which has got its own instructions to then say that, okay, I have this context, I'm planning it, and then I will go call the relevant application or interaction to execute.
So when I'm setting up that, writing that prompt, so I'm giving it all those instructions, it's basically translating those into a coordination of different things and then sending them to the necessary agents to go and execute each of those tasks.
Yes.
And then, that all gets funneled back and the overall task gets executed.
Executed, yes.
Okay. And so, this brings me back to like that, the kind of origin of talking about agentic. Like when we understand that, does that mean we can trust it? Like I think it can be kind of a scary concept, but if I understand what's happening, that makes me feel like it's slightly more trustworthy.
Yes. I think it doesn't just stop at that understanding. It's also giving you the confidence that the agent is behaving across various different scenarios in the way you want it to behave. And this is where responsible AI guardrails, safety measures, evaluation is nothing but testing the agent across different scenarios, telling it that this is what good looks like and I want you to always be well behaved, and these are the only sort of responses you can generate. And in terms of agent behavior, like there's a concept called temperature, which is how well defined and predetermined your answer is to how creative your output and response can be.
Okay, yes, I've heard this term, yeah.
And you can actually control that. The more it is deterministic or more predetermined, you have more answers and responses which are quite similar, and it doesn't get very creative, or it doesn't get creative at all. So it says that this is what I have as my input, this is the answer, and this is what I will share back with the user, to more creative ones which can go anyway. So there are some controls within our agent systems, or when we are setting them up, to ensure that we build that trust and confidence, right? I think especially as a bank or a service provider or a retailer where you're putting these in front of customers, it's not the customer's job to trust it. It is the company's job to ensure that you build the confidence for them to trust it.
So I guess that's kind of where I was going to go, which I think is kind of an interesting question, right? Like you work at a bank, okay? Banks are notoriously have to be careful with what they build and what they provide to their customers, because they're dealing with people's money and their livelihoods. And if banks are using agentic AI and embedding it in things and exploring this as an option, then that makes me think that things where they have less responsibility, they're probably using a ton of agents, right? Like I don't know, I'd love some examples from you, but I suppose that the point that I was trying to get to is if we don't kind of use and explore this stuff ourselves, we're not really avoiding it, right? Because it is being used in other applications and other technology that we face anyway. And so it actually, should we then be kind of going out of our way to try to use and engage with these things, because that makes us a little bit more of a, maybe a bit more of like a skeptic, or like a bit more able to spot when it's being sort of used on us in other places. And I'd be curious to know what you think about that, because I think there's that balance of like, if I don't understand it or I'm not sure about it, should I just not use it?
I don't think you should be scared about it. I believe you have to use it consciously. You need to engage with it consciously. Some of the points I mentioned is being conscious about what you input into it and critically checking what you're getting out of it. But personally, wearing the hat of a user of other services, not just my banks. If I were, having an agent which is taking decisions on its own, and I'm chatting with it, I would ensure that I understand it as an agent in agentic system. I'll try to read up when I'm engaging with it, and when I need a human, I will request for a human. And it becomes very important that you don't lose the human connection within these agentic systems, because, again, you need to monitor them. You need to keep on top of what are the responses that get generated. This brings to the part about observability, right? Like what I am doing, or my role, is to ensure that we are giving the mechanisms and tools to actually alert, raise flags when agents are not behaving well. They are moving away from their intended goals and outcomes, and having humans, what we call as humans in the loop, to sense check responses, ensure that you are reviewing these agent responses over time or at real time, essentially as things are happening, to intervene if things are going wrong, and offering the right sort of steps to mitigate any impact to the customer, but also as a business, operational impact, like if it is trying to access systems it should not, should raise a flag, should raise an alert. If it is, it's not responding at all. For example, if you feed it too much information, if you're asking like a big question, it'll stop responding.
It's like, this is too much.
Too much, yeah.
I can't deal
A little
with
bit
this.
human there.
Yeah. And it could also then, increase the cost for the company, because all of this is uses a lot of energy, a lot of what are called consumption costs, right? Actually utilizing these models, because they are not the bank's IP, or they are not built by the bank.
I think this gives me a good sense of an enhanced sense of trust, I guess, is the idea that businesses that are using AI and are looking to employ agentic AI, whether it's for improve productivity, make more money, whatever, or serve customers better, great. But I'm very kind of encouraged to hear that they're also, particularly banks, are also, building this observability side of things, which is kind of the guardrails and the protection and making sure that
agents don't go rogue.
Yeah,
Yes.
things are being looked after.
Yeah.
In our bank, we have a responsible AI team whose job is to define what agents, what sort of risks there are with agentic systems, what are the mitigation strategies, as well as what sort of guardrails need to be defined. And within the bank, we have, our own assurance frameworks, AI assurance frameworks, so that these guardrail safety gates are embedded, and there's like policy around it. So we are increasing that confidence. And my team and the responsible AI team, we work together to make sure that they offer the policy and what sort of risk mitigation strategies need to be, what we need to take into consideration, work with the security stakeholders and a lot of others who have an interest in the agents behaving well, and I use that to help develop what the tooling mechanism should be to have that operationally working.
That is very encouraging.
That is very encouraging. Yeah. I don't think ignorance is bliss. By the way, I think that we should be learning about this stuff, and I'm really...
only when it comes to things you don't want to know about.
Thank you so much for joining us and talking to us about AI, your role in AI, breaking down all of the jargon and terminology that we didn't know. We're going to ask you a couple of questions from the audience. The first question is, what questions should I be asking myself in order to ensure effective use of AI?
So I think a few questions you should be asking is what I am getting from the AI chat. Is that something I have that I can verify from some sources? Can I ask chat to actually give me the links to the sources? Does this look dubious? Does it look like it doesn't land or align with reality? And thing is, what sort of data sources there are out there that can help me validate it, and double checking it.
And lastly, before we go, how do we balance speed with responsibility? Because everybody wants the efficiency, but we need governance in accuracy and trust.
I love this question.
Oh yeah? Take it away.
Speed with responsibility. And this is my personal take on it.
That's what we want.
Yeah. I think we've been in a world where we want information in milliseconds.
Mm-hmm.
And as we get into a world where things, you have agentic systems which take decisions which we are not even clear of unless someone tells us this is how it behaves and gives us that evidence. I believe latency or slowing down is a good thing. And having a bit of friction to ensure that the agent is behaving well, that it is actually only using the data, the tools that it should have access to, and just waiting that few extra milliseconds to get a response, I don't think is a bad thing. And that is what will help you win trust.
Yeah.
Right? Because when you give the system some time to actually think, go do, and you apply those safety guardrails and rules and policies, which will take time, it will impact the speed at which you get a response. But it means that you've done all that you can to your responsibility to deliver something that is accurate, relevant, and is a positive outcome for the customer.
It's obviously very refreshing to hear that from someone who's, out here building very important AI. But I think we can also apply that, right? Like to our day-to-day use. I think about I like to use AI to write content. And, in theory, it could have the content written in seconds. But actually, I tend to spend a lot of time going back and forth because I want the quality to be good. I want it to sound like me, all of those kind of things. Like you can get speed, but that doesn't mean you should only kind of bias for that speed. You have to be responsible to slow it down a little bit and make sure that the quality that you want is there.
And from a marketing psychology perspective as well, like imagine you see something and something loading an answer, I don't know about you, but if it gave me an answer immediately versus if it showed a loading sign for like a second, I would probably feel better about the loading sign because I know it's actually doing something in the back and actually thinking, which somewhat kind of applies.
And what's even better is actually showing what the system is thinking,
exactly.
right? Like that evidence of I am actually breaking this step down. I am going and accessing these things and actually giving the customer a view of how it's thinking through the task or the ask and the action that it needs to get executed at the end, saying, this is what I have done, is only better. But yes, patience in a world
Easier
that is
said
so
than done.
Exactly. And I think that's also a business call of where you want that to land. But that's my personal take.
That's been amazing. Thank you so much. We could talk for hours, but we don't have hours, so we'll wrap it up. Thank you.
Thanks. It's been fantastic. Great chatting and kind of demystifying this for everybody.
Great.
Well, that was one incredible conversation with Raji. She really broke it down, didn't she?
She's amazing. Because I don't think, it's only when you start to try and verbalize, like say my mum's like, Ailish, like, what is this thing? And I'm like, I know what it is. And then I try and explain and I can't even formulate the words to try and break it down. And she was taking like some like insanely, technical and like jargonful words and concepts and really helping me understand them. And like, super impressive.
Yeah, it's one thing using AI and it's another being able to explain AI and these complex things. What would you say is the one big takeaway that you've had from the conversation today?
So I think for me, like I loved this idea of like the way AI learns being related to how we learn. And just like the way she kind of helped me like in my mind see the difference between kind of, early AI being like my 3-year-old niece trying to draw a cat that's just a scribble, and like more kind of advanced AI being, my older niece who draws an incredible cat. Like that really helped me sort of tie together that whole journey of AI and how it all comes together. And that learning thing I think is so crucial, right? Like that's the bit that helps us. The more we kind of make sense of how to use it and when to use it, that's what helps us to kind of really build that trust, not only in like, okay, I know what it's doing, but also like now I know I can trust that I can use it well.
Yeah.
Right? And like build the confidence in that.
Yeah, that's the main thing.
What was your biggest takeaway?
Well, one thing off the back of what you said, it begs the question, how old is AI's brain? I really want to know what age it's at. But on a side,
that's a good point,
right?
Are we talking 7-year-old? Are we talking 17?
Where are we right now? Yeah. Where are we? And what I learned, I mean, it's so simple, but how I didn't put 2 and 2 together to begin with, I don't know. But like, predictive AI is basically like your WhatsApp predictions and like your predictive text and like predictive text and email and stuff like that. And then just kind of really drawing the lines between generative AI, agentic AI, predictive AI, all these different types of AI, like just making that a lot more clearer in my mind because, we work in AI every day and I know these things. But again, like you said, using it, working in it is one thing, but actually saying it out loud and, and explaining it, that's definitely very different. And it's quite nice to have those definitions kind of embedded now in my mind. So I think this conversation has been invaluable.
But I think that whole, I think understanding that we're using AI all the time, right? Like I remember my mind was blown when someone told me that AI exists in Excel spreadsheets. I was like, I've been using those since I was like 12 years old. Yeah. Like I'm already using AI. And I think that also really like leans into that trust element. It's not this big scary thing that you can't use or it is too much. It's actually like it's in our everyday lives anyway.
Yeah.
It's about kind of like and it's moving fast and it's moving forward. Like engage with it and kind of like don't be afraid to try. That really came out of it for me.
I love that. So Ailish, what are we getting into next week?
So next week, we're going to have a conversation kind of related to what we've talked about today, but building on that, right? Like you're learning AI, you're using it, but like, does it really matter? You know, can we shape AI? Do we have any influence over where it's going? Or if I'm not into it, should I just leave it down? The spoiler alert is that you do have influence. It is important. And next week, we're going to really dig into that.
We'll see you there. And if you have any questions yourself, then drop us a note. We'll leave the instructions for how to do so in the description below.